quiet suburban neighborhood, nestled at the edge of a dense forest, sat an old Victorian house. It was a beautiful yet eerie place, with history dating back over a century. The house was known for being both charming and unsettling, surrounded by whispers of strange occurrences that took place within its walls. One chilly autumn evening, Emily, a 25-year-old graphic designer, found herself alone in the house for the weekend. Her parents had gone out of town unexpectedly, leaving her in charge of the eerie mansion. Though a bit apprehensive, she saw it as an opportunity to enjoy some solitude and concentrate on her work. As night fell, Emily buried herself in her projects, the soft glow of her computer screen illuminating the dim room. The wind rustled the leaves outside, creating eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The house creaked and groaned with every gust, setting her on edge. Around midnight, Emily decided to take a break. She made herself a cup of tea and settled on the couch with a book, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. That's when she heard it, a faint, shuffling sound coming from upstairs. Her heart raced as she strained to listen, hoping it was just her imagination. But the sound continued, a slow, deliberate series of footsteps moving across the floor above her. Panic set in as Emily realized she was home alone. She glanced at her phone, contemplating whether to call the police or simply flee the house. Before she could decide, the footsteps abruptly stopped. Clutching her tea, Emily hesitated before calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Her voice quivered in the quiet house. No response came. She stood up, her footsteps echoing on the wooden floor, and crept towards the staircase leading to the second floor. Each step felt like an eternity, her breath caught in her throat. Reaching the landing, Emily saw that the hallway was shrouded in darkness. The faint moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting an eerie glow on the wallpaper. She held her breath, listening intently for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked directly behind her. With a gasp, Emily spun around to find herself face to face with a shadowy figure. A scream tore from her throat as she stumbled back, dropping her tea. The figure retreated into the darkness, disappearing from view. Heart pounding, Emily fumbled for her phone and dialed 911, her voice trembling as she reported an intruder. The police arrived swiftly, searching every corner of the house. But to Emily's horror, they found no signs of forced entry and no trace of the intruder. The unsettling feeling of being watched persisted even after the officers left, leaving her shaken and terrified. Over the next few days, Emily's anxiety grew. Strange occurrences continued, objects moved on their own, doors creaked open, and eerie whispers seemed to fill the air. Desperate for answers, she began researching the house's history, unearthing tales of unexplained deaths, disappearances, and rumors of restless spirits. Determined to confront whatever entity haunted the house, Emily enlisted the help of a local medium. Together, they conducted a séance, attempting to communicate with the restless spirits that seemed to inhabit the Victorian mansion. During the session, Emily felt an overwhelming sense of unease, as if the walls themselves were closing in around her. Suddenly, a chilling voice seemed to echo through the room, recounting tales of tragedy and despair. The medium's face turned pale as she relayed the message. The spirit claimed to be a former resident of the house, wronged in life and seeking retribution. As the séance continued, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, and Emily feared she had unleashed something beyond her control. In the weeks that followed, Emily's life became a nightmare. The paranormal activity escalated, with violent poltergeist-like manifestations that left her physically and emotionally drained. Sleep-deprived and terrified, she sought help from paranormal investigators, hoping to find a way to put the tormented spirits to rest. After intense investigations, cleansing rituals, and months of turmoil, the activity finally began to subside. The house regained a sense of calm, and Emily slowly started to rebuild her life. Yet, she could never forget the chilling whispers, the haunting footsteps, and the terrifying encounter that left her scarred forever. To this day, the old Victorian house remains a source of curiosity and dread in the neighborhood, a reminder that sometimes, the terrors that lurk within the darkness of our own homes can be the most chilling of all. Emily had always considered herself a brave person, but nothing could have prepared her for the terror that awaited her during a weekend house sitting for her friends. The quaint suburban house seemed harmless enough, nestled among the trees on a quiet street. Her friends had left for a family emergency, leaving Emily alone with their pets and a list of instructions. What they didn't mention was the chilling legend that surrounded the neighboring abandoned house. The first night passed without incident. Emily settled in, made herself comfortable, and tried to shake off the eerie feeling that she was being watched. She brushed it off as her imagination running wild, attributing it to being alone in an unfamiliar house. However, the following night, as the clock struck midnight, Emily's phone rang, jolting her from her half-sleep. She answered with a shaky voice, only to be met with static on the other end. Her heart raced as she hung up the phone and glanced out the window. A pale moon illuminated the overgrown yard of the neighboring house, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in the darkness. She tried to convince herself that it was just a prank call, but the silence that followed felt heavier than ever. The next night, the phone rang again at midnight, the same static-filled voice whispering unintelligible words that sent shivers down Emily's spine. She considered calling the police, but what would she say? That she was receiving strange phone calls from an abandoned house? She decided to tough it out, attributing it to a malfunctioning phone line. As the weekend progressed, Emily's nerves frayed. Sleep eluded her, and every creak of the house seemed magnified in the stillness of the night. She couldn't escape the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her, waiting for the moment she let her guard down. On the final night, as the clock's hands moved towards midnight, Emily's anxiety reached its peak. She stared at the clock, her heart pounding in her chest, counting down the seconds. And then, it happened, the phone rang. This time, the voice on the other end was clearer, but no less terrifying. It whispered her name, followed by a string of details about her actions throughout the weekend, details that no one else could possibly know. Paralyzed with fear, Emily clutched the phone, tears streaming down her face. She whispered a shaky plea for it to stop, for whatever was tormenting her to leave her alone. But instead of silence, the voice on the other end grew louder, more intense, until it seemed to reverberate through the walls of the house itself. Desperate to escape, Emily rushed to the front door, only to find it locked from the inside. She turned to the windows, but they were sealed shut, refusing to budge. The voice grew louder, filling the room, drowning out all other sounds. The walls seemed to close in on her, and the air grew thick with an oppressive darkness. As Emily sank to the floor, her mind racing, a sudden realization struck her: the voice wasn't coming from the abandoned house. It was coming from within the walls of the very house she was in. The horror dawned on her that she was trapped, not by a physical barrier, but by an entity that had taken control of her surroundings. In a last desperate attempt to break free, Emily mustered all her courage and screamed, letting out a primal cry that pierced the suffocating darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the voice stopped. The walls seemed to release their hold on her, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Emily was left trembling and gasping for breath, surrounded by the stillness of the night. When her friends returned the next day, they found Emily sitting on the porch, her eyes haunted and her hands shaking. She recounted the terrifying events of the weekend, but they found no evidence of anyone else being in the house or any unusual phone activity. They chalked it up to stress and lack of sleep, trying to reassure Emily that it was all in her imagination. But Emily knew the truth. She had faced a malevolent force that had toyed with her fears and tried to consume her. And as she left the house that had once seemed so ordinary, she couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness still lingered, waiting for its next victim. In a quiet suburban neighborhood nestled at the edge of a dense forest, lived a young girl named Lily. She was an imaginative and curious child, always looking for adventure and excitement. One day, Lily's parents announced that they had to attend a family emergency and would be leaving her alone for the weekend. Although she was a bit nervous, Lily saw this as an opportunity for a mini adventure of her own. As her parents drove away, Lily's excitement grew. She spent the evening indulging in her favorite movies, eating popcorn, and enjoying the freedom of having the whole house to herself. As the sun set and darkness enveloped the neighborhood, Lily's imagination began to play tricks on her. Every creak of the house and rustle of leaves outside seemed to magnify it in the silence. With a nervous chuckle, Lily decided to head to bed early. She climbed into her cozy bed, glancing at the full-length mirror on her closet door. A peculiar feeling washed over her as she stared at her own reflection. The dim light from the night lamp cast eerie shadows, making the reflection appear almost like a separate entity. Just as Lily was about to turn away, her reflection did something unexpected. It smiled. A wide, unsettling grin that sent shivers down her spine. Lily gasped and stumbled back, her heart racing. She blinked, hoping it was a trick of the light, but when she looked again, her reflection seemed normal. Brushing it off as her overactive imagination, Lily tried to shake off the feeling of unease. She closed her eyes and drifted into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, Lily awoke to find her reflection in the mirror behaving strangely again. It was mimicking her actions, but not quite in sync. When she raised her hand, her reflection's hand lingered a moment longer, as if it had a mind of its own. Lily's curiosity was piqued, and a sense of foreboding crept over her. Throughout the day, Lily observed her reflection's odd behavior. It displayed emotions that didn't match her own. When she was calm, her reflection seemed agitated, and when she was happy, her reflection appeared sad. Unease settled deeper within her as she began to suspect that her reflection wasn't just a reflection anymore. As night fell once again, Lily couldn't bring herself to tear her eyes away from the mirror. She watched as her reflection grinned menacingly, its eyes flashing with malice. Lily felt a knot of fear tighten in her chest. She backed away from the mirror, but her reflection didn't move. It stayed, grinning wider and wider, until its smile seemed to stretch impossibly across the glass. Lily's heart raced, and a cold sweat formed on her brow. She stumbled out of her room, unable to escape the feeling that her reflection was trying to break free from the confines of the mirror. She locked herself in the bathroom, desperate to escape the malevolent gaze that seemed to follow her. In the bathroom, Lily's reflection in the mirror continued to mimic her every move. Panic consumed her as she realized that her reflection was no longer a mirror image but a separate, sinister entity. She realized that the reflection was trying to swap places with her, to step out of the mirror and into her world. With trembling hands, Lily dialed her parents' number, desperately trying to explain the chilling events that had unfolded since they left. They promised to return immediately, but Lily knew that she couldn't wait. She needed to confront whatever was happening on her own. Summoning all her courage, Lily returned to her room. The reflection in the mirror had become more distorted and twisted, resembling a grotesque version of herself. It clawed at the surface, its grin now a twisted grimace. Lily knew she had to break the connection between the mirror and the reflection. With a scream, Lily hurled her bedside lamp at the mirror, shattering the glass. The reflection convulsed and distorted before fading away entirely. The room grew still, the malevolent presence dissipating. Lily's parents arrived shortly after, finding their daughter shaken and tearful. She recounted the harrowing experience, and they embraced her tightly, relieved that she was safe. From that day on, Lily never looked at mirrors the same way. She couldn't shake the feeling that the reflection was a glimpse into a darker, parallel world, waiting for a chance to cross over. The shattered mirror served as a constant reminder of the nightmarish encounter, a testament to the thin barrier between reality and the unknown. For Emily, a weekend of solitude in her family's old Victorian mansion was both a blessing and a curse. Her parents had left for a conference, leaving her to enjoy the grandeur of their ancestral home. The first night was serene. She cozied up with a book, enjoying the quiet and the flickering fire in the hearth. But on the second night, everything changed. As the clock struck midnight, Emily was startled by a faint whisper that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. She strained to listen, her heart pounding. The voice was soft, like a gentle breeze, yet laden with an eerie undertone that sent shivers down her spine. She tried to dismiss it as her imagination, but the whisper persisted. "What do you fear, Emily?" the voice murmured, as if it knew her intimately. Stunned, she glanced around the room, but no one was there. The windows were shut, and the doors were locked. The mansion was empty, or so she thought. The next night, the whisper returned, more insistent this time. Deep down, you're terrified of being alone, it cooed. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The voice seemed to echo her innermost thoughts, her hidden anxieties. She tried to tell herself that it was just a prank, that someone was playing tricks on her. But as the weekend wore on, the voice grew stronger, more taunting. On the third night, Emily mustered her courage and decided to confront the source of the whisper. Armed with a flashlight, she ventured into the darkest corners of the mansion. The air was heavy, and a sense of foreboding hung in the atmosphere. She reached the grand library, where the whisper seemed to converge. Behind the bookshelves, the voice beckoned. Emily's heart raced as she pulled away a dusty old book, revealing a hidden passage. With a mix of curiosity and trepidation, she descended into the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the mansion. The walls of the tunnel were covered in eerie symbols and faint markings, as if they held secrets from centuries past. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. "You can't escape your fears, Emily. They're a part of you." The words seemed to echo through the underground passages, bouncing off the cold stone walls. Suddenly, Emily stumbled upon a chamber bathed in an otherworldly light. At the center of the room was an ancient mirror, its surface marred by age and neglect. As she gazed into it, her reflection started to shift, revealing a version of herself consumed by fear and despair. "You can't ignore us forever," the reflection hissed, its eyes burning with malevolence. Emily stumbled back, her heart racing. She realized that the whispers were not just external, they were manifestations of her own inner demons, projected onto the walls and the mirror. In a moment of clarity, Emily understood that confronting her fears was the only way to escape the torment. She reached deep within herself, acknowledging her insecurities and traumas. As she did, the whispers transformed, becoming softer and more comforting. Exhausted but empowered, Emily emerged from the tunnels, leaving behind the haunted mirror and the whispering walls. The mansion felt different now, no longer suffocating her with fear. She had faced her demons and emerged stronger. As the sun rose on the final day of her solitude, Emily realized that the mansion held not only the secrets of her family's history but also the keys to her own personal growth. And though the whispering walls had tested her resolve, they had ultimately led her to a newfound sense of strength and self-acceptance.